a newsletter is something that, a lot of times people will send a digital newsletter, right? You'll get an email and it'll say XYZ company name newsletter. And you'll click on that, and there are like different articles and different little stories and different things like that. But one of my little secret niche that I have seen that has proven time and time again to work very well for building a wall around your existing client list and even your prospect list is a physical old school newsletter that shows up in your mailbox once a month.
Wow.
But you got to there's a formula for it, and you got to make sure you do it right, because
Welcome, everybody, back to another exciting show of the About That Water podcast, where we help you build strong financial habits. And I have the opportunity to bring on somebody who's been doing the credit repair process for well over 12 years. Now he's doing business to business support to help you grow to that next level. So if you're actually thinking about going to start a business or looking to get into a business, or your business is just sitting there, but it seems to be a little stagnant, this episode is for you. So how you doing today, Marco?
I'm doing good, Anthony. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Yeah, no problem. So can you just go down and just do a quick deep dive right in for the people that don't know about you? What got you into the finances?
So I started a financial services business. Well, we're in 2023 now, so it was actually about 13 years ago. And I had been working for another guy for about a year and was introduced to this thing called credit repair. And that was right after some of your listeners may remember this well, some may not. But back in 2008, we had this thing that we called the mortgage meltdown. And, things were pretty bad financially in the world, specifically with the real estate market. I was working another job at the time. I wasn't self-employed yet. I had a background, believe it or not, in the collections world, which kind of it wasn't really planned. It just kind of happened that way. And I was very, very unhappy in that world because, I was kind of the bad guy, right? Like I had to call people and actually had a job where I would have to go to your house because I was working for the cable company. And so if you got behind on your cable, I was the person that showed up and basically try to collect that money. But again, this was right when we were in a bad recession. People were not really concerned at that time about their cable. This was, of course, before all the fun streaming services and all that good stuff. You either pretty much paid your cable or you didn't. Those were the two options, and if you didn't, it got shut off. But people were more concerned at that point about keeping on the electricity. They were not really worried about cable. Cable was at that moment a very much luxury. At that point, it was more like we just got to make sure we got electricity, we got some food on the table. So the first thing to go pretty much was the cable. That was entertainment. That was fun. And so I got into that job. It was horrible. It was really bad because again, nobody really wanted to pay their bills. So I was my performance numbers, everything were very low, and I was just at a bad place. And through a family member, I was told that there was this individual. I live in San Antonio, Texas, and there was this individual that lived in Austin that had this little business doing something called credit repair. And I said, what is that? Like, I didn't even know what that was.
Right.
And it kind of put two and two words together, but I didn't understand what that, how do you repair credit? I thought your credit score is your credit score. That's that. You're stuck with it. Invited me up there to Austin. So I drove up there, had a little meeting with him. He explained to me, I have this business. I've been doing it since 2005. This is what we do. We help people to improve their credit so they could buy a house. And I said, man, you know what? After being a bill collector for the last several years, that sounds like something I would really love to do. So I said, it sounds like I would get to be the good guy in that scenario instead of always being the bad guy, bill collector. Let's just put it this way. I was ready to change teams. I was absolutely tired of being on that bad guys team. And I wanted to, for once, really be able to help people. So I fell for this thing hard. I mean, I was like, yes, right here. You're speaking my language here. And I went ahead and agreed to sign on with him. did some training, different things like that. Started working for him part-time. I was doing that part-time while I was still keeping my other day job, with the collections and all that stuff. And I just would look forward to doing those calls, like calling people and talking to them about their credit. It was like my dessert for the day. At the end of the day, I would just love it, after spending the day chasing after people. Now, I wasn't like some mean bill collector. That's just not my style. But just the nature of the job was very negative. And it was just starting to really, kind of affect me and drain me. And so finally I got that point where I was able to jump into it full time. And I hit it hard. I was able to really kick that thing off well because I had this background that I was very unhappy with. So given that opportunity to do that full time, I took it very seriously and I did really well with it. And the guy who owned the company was like, I'm really surprised and really actually impressed that you're doing as well as you are so quickly. Why don't you move up here to Austin with me? And, I can train you better and I can actually turn over some of these clients to you and you can take over my business. Basically, he promised me the world, Anthony.
Wow.
And so I was really excited. I moved up there to Austin, actually moved my family up there with me. At the time, I just had two little ones, my wife and two little ones. We move up there. And I kid you not, maybe like 3 months into that endeavor, that same guy tells me, you know what? There's really not a whole lot going on up here. I think you should probably go ahead and move back to San Antonio. And it was like, let me make sure I just heard that right, because I signed a 12-month lease on my apartment.
Right.
I moved my whole family up there, and you're going to tell me that you want me to just go ahead and turn right back around and go home. It doesn't really work like that.
Right.
Okay. And so needless to say, I got rubbed the wrong way very much, but there was a little silver lining in that he had partnered me up with this other guy that worked for him since the very beginning to train me. And me and that guy, his name was Jay. Me and Jay, we absolutely just hit it off. And Jay and I made a great connection. And Jay and I were like doing all these meetups and we were training and so I told him about what happened. And he was like, you know what, man, I'm telling you right now, this guy, he's been mistreating me for a long time. I feel like we're being taken advantage of here. He goes, at least you're smart enough because you're already thinking about how to get out. Me, I've been putting up with this guy's crap for years. So we started kind of planning and plotting of how can we go ahead and start our own version, our own company. But the problem was we had signed a non-compete agreement with this guy. And so plus he had a little bit of a fiery personality. So we knew that if we were to tell him, you know what, we're leaving you, we're going to start our own company, he was not going to receive that well, especially if we try to be sneaky about it. So Jay and I decided there was only one option. We're going to have to face this guy man to man and tell him straight up to his face, this is what we want to do. You've been mistreating us. You need to just be honest with yourself and acknowledge that and give us your blessing in this new endeavor. And that's exactly what we did. And Anthony, I don't know how it went down. Somehow, by the grace of God, this man agreed. This man agreed, gave us his blessing. For that moment in time, he said, I give you my blessing. I acknowledge that. Yes, I probably shouldn't have asked you to move up here and then tell you to move right back. All that kind of stuff, right? And he gave us his blessing. And within 24 hours of that, he changed his mind. And he was threatening legal action and screaming at us and leaving all these, insane voicemails and stuff. But I said, it's too late, man. You gave us your blessing. It's too late. I've already filed my articles of incorporation with the state. My LLC is formed. Sorry. And we were off to the races, and yeah, for a few months we had to deal with an occasional threatening call from him, which would really, set us back mentally and emotionally. Every time he did that, we were like, oh my gosh, is he going to figure out how to just shut this whole thing down on us? So we were so scared. We were so worried, but we pushed through. We kept doing our thing. We were very careful not to take any of his previous clients. We had to go out and just find new customers. And that's exactly what we did. And we built that business. And Jay and I ran that thing for 9 years. Okay. And then after 9 years, I was able to buy Jay out. as my business partner. He wanted to go a different direction. I bought him out. I took over full ownership of that company, and I was like, you know what? 2020 is my year. Right. 2020 is for the taking. And then this little mishap showed up at the beginning of 2020. You might remember it was called COVID.
Yeah, I might remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, you might have noticed that little small speed bump. Right. And that basically just flipped everything kind of upside down on me. And so my plans, did not go exactly as I meant for them to. And, don't get me wrong, I did okay. I mean, we did well 2020, 2021, we did well. But once the market dried up and once those house prices got to be just insane, and once the interest rates went up, I just found that the average consumer who was already, starting to feel the pinch, just didn't really have the means to, spend money on improving their credit and buying a house, and gas prices were starting to go up. Inflation was starting to go up. They were feeling it. I served the average person with that business, the average hardworking person in that business. And they were very squeezed. And they were just like, I just don't have the funds. I just can't do this, And that's where I started saying, you know what? I kind of saw that writing on the wall. I said, I'm going to have to come up with a little plan B here because, I think this might be a long-term problem. And so I decided right then and there that I was going to go ahead and switch over to a different type of business that was more serving other businesses. And that way, maybe if I could go after a business that wasn't in an industry that was so affected by, economic times, maybe that would keep me a little bit stronger, a little bit safer. So that's what I started doing. I started taking all that I learned, Anthony, over those 12 years of running that credit repair business. And I said, I got a lot of knowledge in here about a lot of different things, but mostly about marketing.
Yeah.
That was my number one favorite thing, was studying and learning about marketing. Every single month I was learning something new, something different, some strategy, some tactic, testing it out, trying it. Okay, that didn't work. That's okay. We'll try this, until I figured it out what worked. And so I had a lot of knowledge in that arena. And I said, I think I could take all of that and just put that into action and try to help other businesses. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. I am now running a marketing agency with a specialization in more books publishing. So I create little books for business owners that they can give away as a ultimate business card, we call it.
Yep, it's the ultimate one.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And a few other little marketing assets which we could kind of talk about as we go along here on your show.
Definitely, yeah, because I went to a financial conference and somebody just handed me a book and they signed it and everything like that. And I was like, you giving me a full book? He was like, yeah, this is how I marketed my show, because he was like, people would least likely throw away a book than anything else. So, and yeah, so as you see behind me, I have so many books now, because most of them were either given to me from presents, and usually I throw away the card that they give me for like a birthday card or whatever, but I do keep the books or the items that they give me. So
yeah, exactly. Yep.
So can you talk a little bit about the use of, like, how did you build your list up? Because starting over again, in a sense, you weren't almost starting over again because you had some of the clients from your credit business, or did you have to really start all over to build your list?
No, it really was, Anthony. It really was starting all over. I mean, I had developed a very, very nice list on the credit repair side, but those were pretty much 98%, 99%, 9 to 5 people. You know what I mean? So if I was to take that list, I got a list of about, 20,000 people that I had grown over the years that all had, credit troubles and stuff. Some of them signed up, some of them didn't. But if I was to send out a blast to that list and say, hey, I'm a business owner, I would literally get 2 or 3 maybe bites, out of that. And so I just kind of felt like that was not the place that I wanted to spend my energy trying to solicit business from that list. So I realized I got to basically start this thing over.
Mm.
And what I ended up doing was I said, I have a limited budget because this is a new business, grassroots. I'm going to have to figure out where am I going to get a decent little bang for my buck. And I actually decided that I would start with the B&I group. Are you familiar with B&I, those networking chapters?
No, not at all. What is
Okay. Yeah, so B&I stands for Business Networking International.
Mm-hmm.
There are B&I chapters in every major city, not just in America, but in the entire world. It's been around for a good while, and they have a proven system and a proven concept where you meet up once a week. You have your in person or on Zoom, depending on which option you want to go with. I decided that I want to go with an in person because things were really moving back in that direction again after COVID, and obviously there's something about making that personal in person, shake your hand, look you in the face type of thing that's going to be a little bit probably more impactful than just meeting on a virtual call every single week. And so I decided I want to join that one. I found a chapter. It was a fairly new chapter. It had only been around for 4 or 5 months, but it was a group of people that were super motivated, super excited. I mean, these people were on fire for every one of them were trying to build their business. And what they do is they only allow one person from each industry, into the group. So you got one realtor, you got one mortgage, you got one insurance, you got one financial planner, on and on like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that way that person gets respected and gets the leads for that one particular niche. And so that group works very, very well, primarily for industries that serve like for home services, like I was mentioning, roofer, pest control, plumber, HVAC, those kind of things. Those are the kind of businesses where you could jump into a B&I group and it's almost a guarantee that you're going to succeed because there's an automatic demand for that kind of work. And you have a network of other people, like you said, your realtor, your mortgage person. They're always dealing with buyers that are like, all right, we bought the house. Now I need to get somebody to paint this thing. Now I need somebody to do a new roof. Now, and so those leads are just constantly getting thrown around left and right. But there's also room in there for B2B. There's also room in there to go in and say, so all of you guys are business owners, and I happen to provide a service that benefits business owners. And so in many ways, you can go in there and have some success by making sure that what you provide is of benefit to the business owners. So that's basically what I did. I went in there with my services. I brought in a big stack of all my little books. I started giving them away to everybody. I started, they give you like a 1-minute pitch. You get like a little 60-second pitch. So I'd go up there, give my little pitch. Hey, I make books. I do marketing. We do this. We do that. And that actually allowed me to at least have some sort of a foundation to start building up my list and start, making some connections with some people. Now, you're not going to go ahead and make money right away with something like that. It's just not going to happen. Mm-hmm. You got to stick this thing out. You got to be in it for a while. You got to show up every single week. You got to give your little pitch. You got to shake those hands. You got to give out your business card, or in my case, my book. You got to keep doing that week after week after week after week. And if you do that, maybe in 90 days, maybe in 4 or 5 months, things will start falling into place. And I was fortunate that right about the 90-day mark, that's exactly what started happening. I started actually getting some action. I started getting a little bit of some nibbles on my reel, Yeah. And because I was casting those nets left and right, but there wasn't a whole lot that was happening that first 90 days. And I knew that. I said, this is that phase where you got to throw seeds.
Yeah.
You just got to go out there and throw seeds left and right. So for me, seed throwing was just giving my book away like a madman. So I'm printing those books. I'm giving them away to every single person that I came in contact with that I felt was even a reasonable prospect. Because even if I felt like maybe you weren't, I would usually tell them, take my book. And if you know someone, that could use this type of service, would you mind giving them this book? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. And let me tell you, I would hear such great feedback. People would tell me, I read your book. It was amazing. I didn't think it was going to be so easy to read. I thought it was going to be like a real gimmicky type thing. But you know what? I actually learned a lot from it. I got it right here on my nightstand. I got it right here on my table. You said what you said a minute ago, Anthony. You nailed it on the head. People don't throw books away.
They'd rather get it away than throw it away.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I remember I had some books a long time ago that it just wasn't relevant to me anymore. And I ended up just taking them to Goodwill. I was like, I'm not going to throw these things away no matter what. I worst case scenario, I'll give them away. And so, but usually with these little business books, what happens is that they will usually refer them to someone that they know may need that particular service. So to answer your question, that's how I kind of started getting the ball moving without having to spend a lot of money on paid ads on Facebook, on paid LinkedIn or on Instagram. And there's all these ways to generate business, but you're going to have to pay money for those ads. I needed a way where I could pretty much don't get me wrong, BNI has a fee, but that fee will cover me for a whole entire year.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So it's a one-time fee, but take advantage and full advantage. Well, it seemed like you took full advantage of that particular fee.
Definitely. And I'm still doing that right now because I'm about 6 months into it. And I still have about a half a year left. But now my network has expanded tremendously. And even though somebody in that group maybe didn't need my help, for a perfect example, there's a guy in there that represents our HVAC, right? They work on air conditioners and heating. That guy definitely doesn't need my services, but the guy has a boss that owns the company. And I was connected with him. I'm a big cigar smoker, so that's my number one hobby. I go to the cigar shop, I smoke there, and that's actually where I do my second most networking, by the way, is at the cigar shop, because that is a place where there's predominantly business owners, business professionals, and it's in a good setting where you can sit there, you can smoke a cigar, and you can, talk with people and get to know them. And so I end up meeting the owner at the cigar shop. We start talking, and we're not even talking business. I'm talking cigars. I'm like, this is my favorite brand. I like this brand right here. They're really good. They're out of Nicaragua. They do this, they do that, right? And he's all fascinated, like, man, I didn't know there was so much into all this stuff. And, he's really liking the vibe there because they got like a little bar. You can have a little old fashioned while it's just a great setup. And then long story short, I'm in the process right now of signing him up for a long-term marketing package. So that came about from the BNI group. Maybe he wasn't in the group, but his employee was in the group. See? And then I was able to get turned over to talk to him.
So in other words, this is going to the other part, which is understanding the psychology of your ideal customer and how to use it to their advantage.
Yes.
So, because I'm thinking of, getting around those spaces where you enjoy going to, but you need to find the people also that are interested or going to those same exact spaces.
Yes.
Gotcha.
That's exactly right. Yep. Yeah. And so there's actually a group, we call it the Havana Boys. This group is called the Havana Boys Networking Club. And so once a month, this group of business owners and business professionals gets together at a different venue, all cigar related. And we meet up and we basically sit there, and that's the purpose of that group, right? It's like, it's a networking mixer. So it's an evening time thing. You're sitting there, you got a little drink in your hand, you got your little cigar in the other hand, and everybody's just kind of, what do you do? What do you do? Oh, wow, that's really interesting. And then you can sponsor if you want to sponsor and pay a little bit of extra. They'll give you like a 1 minute little pitch in front of the group. I just joined that group officially. So when I joined, they allowed me to also give like a little 60-second pitch in front of the group since I was a brand new member. So I stood up there. I told them what I did. And as soon as I was done, 2-3 people come up to me afterwards like, oh, man, that sounds really interesting. Can I get your book? Can you tell me a little bit more about how you can help me? And these are all other business owners or business professionals. I met this individual. He's a chiropractor. He's had his chiropractor business for a while. I met the other guy that does plumbing. So there's just a wide range of people that are all in that group. We have that common bond that we like cigars. But really, what are we there for? At the end of the day, we're there to do business.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So, sometimes my wife teases me and say, "Do you even work? You're over there at the cigar shop. You're always drinking. You're always," and I'm like, no. Don't get me wrong. I might have a little drink in my hand, but I'm not over there. This is not like when I was 20 years old and I'm acting a fool. I'm over there. I'm conducting business, and she just teasing me. She giving me a hard time. She knows what it is that I'm doing, but it can come across that way. It can really come like all my pictures that I put on my Instagram story are like me at the cigar shop, and people will tell me straight up like, so I thought you said that you had a business, because all I see you doing is spending time at the cigar shop. And I'm like, no, I promise you I am working. Contrary to what you may see, I am working.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of finances, is that when you understand it, it is actually the ability to do what you want when you want and have the full autonomy to enjoy the fruits of your work. Like this is the reason why it would get you up every day.
That's exactly right.
So,
you're exactly right.
Yeah, because one of the things is like now that you understand the psychology of the perfect customer or the perfect client, and then you already figured out a way to kind of help build that list. Now, the next thing that is important to a lot of people who are looking out there is like, how do you retain that list?
Yes, yeah, no, that is a really good question, and I have a system, or you could say a process, to ensure that exact thing happens. Okay. And my little secret recipe for that is what I call the old school physical newsletter. So a newsletter is something that, a lot of times people will send a digital newsletter, right? You'll get an email and it'll say XYZ company name newsletter. And you'll click on that, and there are like different articles and different little stories and different things like that. But one of my little secret niche that I have seen that has proven time and time again to work very well for building a wall around your existing client list and even your prospect list is a physical old school newsletter that shows up in your mailbox once a month.
Wow.
But you got to there's a formula for it, and you got to make sure you do it right. Because if you're just sending some generic little templated thing, then will it help a little bit because there's a reminder of your company name and all that? Yeah, it could. But the real secret recipe to the newsletter, Anthony, is you got to make sure that you are actually building a relationship with your client base by letting them know a little bit more about you every single month. So the formula that I follow is, when I'm doing my list building, I always ask for an address. Now, when you're a business owner, that's typical. A lot of times you're going to say, hey, can I get your address in case I want to send you an invitation to one of these networking groups or what have you? Okay, sure. But really what I'm trying to do is I want to send them that little newsletter in the mail next month, because I already know that, first of all, the mailbox is not that cluttered these days. Now the email inbox is very cluttered, but the mailbox is not that busy anymore. So when something arrives in there, it's a little easier to stand out.
That is a gem right there. Yes, that's so true.
And then here's my favorite thing about mail is that once I put that in your hand, for that moment right there, I do have your undivided attention.
Yep.
And I always tease about this. I always say, I don't care if you take my newsletter with you to go to the bathroom. At least I know that I have your undivided attention while you close that door, and it's only you and my newsletter in that bathroom, right?
Right.
And so I'm like, I'll tell people, like, put this on the back of your, somewhere in the back of your little toilet seat, and that way when you go in there, you got some good reading. Put the phone to the side. You shouldn't take it in there anyways and be dirty like that. Right. And go ahead and read my newsletter. And I believe that a lot of people probably do, in fact, do that. And while they're reading that newsletter, they're only reading and thinking about my info at that exact moment. And so, like, I'm going to give you an example. This last month, my newsletter, the article was something to the effect of how let me think here, make sure I got this right. How my entrepreneurial journey started by almost losing my life. Something to the effect of that, right? So if you saw a title like that, most likely you're going to be like, what?
Right.
I got to read this. What is this about? And so in that story, I go on to talk about how before I started my credit repair business, I was in a really bad place. I had a lot of debt. So I'm going to bring that up because this is part of your show.
Yeah.
And I was doing the Dave Ramsey Total Money Makeover, right?
Yep.
Okay, I'm sure you're familiar with it. And one of the things that Dave Ramsey mentions is this was before Uber. This was before Uber Eats and all these things, right? Back in the late early 2000s. He mentions you should consider delivering pizza as a part-time job. Okay, so I took out this second job and I was delivering pizza at night. I went to a very, very sketch apartment complex and I ended up getting robbed at gunpoint trying to deliver pizza, right? And I think I want to say the guy took $15.
Wow.
Pointed the gun at my face. I gave him the $15. He ran off. I give glory to God, Anthony, that he did not pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Because it allowed me to see the light of another day. But it also allowed me to do some real reflecting in my life at that moment in time. And I said, what am I doing? I'm out here at night risking my life for $15.
Right.
And it really put life into perspective for me. And I said, I always had these dreams of becoming a business owner. And I'm out here just working a second job and doing all this stuff. And I was miserable. And I knew why I was doing it, but I was very unhappy. And I said, if life is this fragile that I could get shot at any moment's notice like this, trying to deliver a pizza, make a little extra money, then why don't I just go all in and follow my dreams anyway?
Hey.
And so, you know what I'm saying? That was a big turning point for me. And I was able to really motivate myself to come out of my comfort zone and face my fear of starting that business. And so that played a big role in that. So I tell that story in my newsletter as a way to make a connection with my fellow business owners that are reading that newsletter. So you think if I was to send a newsletter that just strictly said, like, here's 5 tips on how to grow your business versus how I almost got shot and how that put me in the right direction. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The difference. There's a big difference between those two things. Now, don't get me wrong. The newsletter has a lot of warm and fuzzy, what I call warm and fuzzy stuff. That's all those little fun, like little tips and tricks and all that stuff. That's okay. But you just got to make sure you have that relationship building component on the front page, on the front cover of your newsletter. And then all the warm and fuzzy stuff can be on the backside. Because,
okay.
Yep. That's what builds that relationship. And that's what helps the person to say, you know what? Every month goes by, I'm learning more and more about this guy, and I'm not going to leave him. I know him now. I'm friends with him, and that's how that newsletter helps to build a little wall around your client base, so that they're less inclined to leave you.
So what was it like? What else do you add in there? Do you add in like other businesses that you have worked with? Like, hey, if you're looking for this, or like if somebody wanted to be part of that newsletter, do they just kind of contact you like, hey, I'd like to be at the end of it, or can you put a link to my business, or how does that work?
Yeah, so that is a very good question. If I find a business that I feel would be like a great partnership, to go out in front of that same group of people that I'm sending my newsletter to, I will always consider the possibility of adding maybe like a little advertisement for them or something like that. If somebody is willing to pay me a small or reasonable, let's call it reasonable amount of money to be a part of that.
Yeah.
That's definitely an option. But the bigger picture of this thing is me as the business owner, I'm really paying for the whole entire newsletter package myself. And so that the whole newsletter is really just featuring me and my company as kind of the star of the show.
I see where you go.
Because what happens is I really want them, when they get that newsletter, I just want them to mostly be thinking about me.
Got you.
Because this is my number one tool and resource to stay in front of my customers every single month. Now, you might have heard this term drip. Okay. In recent years, drip means something very different. I'm still holding on to old school drip.
How
Okay.
about you?
For me, old school drip means I'm going to drip content in front of my customer base every single month.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my definition of drip is, because I want to make sure that I'm like a drippy faucet. I'm going to keep these things just coming up in front of you in every way that I possibly can. Now, a lot of people are already doing that with email.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's vitally important. If you're not staying in front of your list, at least on an email, then these people are never going to hear from you. They're not even going to know that you exist.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Here's another way that you can drip content: a podcast. It looks like Anthony already figured that out a long time ago.
Right.
And so this is a wonderful excuse to get in front of your customer base, send them an email and say, on this latest episode, I interviewed Mr. So-and-so. Mr. So-and-so does this and that. So that's another reason why you get to stay in front of people. But one of the areas I just felt like was being neglected was that mailbox. Yeah. Now, I'll be up front. It is a little bit more expensive. It's a little bit more expensive. So, because you're spending money on paper, you're spending money on postage.
Stamps, yeah.
Right. And I'll be honest, it can be a good sized little project or a good sized little endeavor to have to put that newsletter together every single month. And so that is one of the services that I offer. I do offer the newsletter production for business owners. If they want to outsource that and they don't want to have to mess with it, we'll go ahead and create that content. We interview them, every month or every other month in a short little interview. Ask them, hey, what's going on in your life? Tell us a little something about yourself. And then we repurpose that into that cover story.
Nice.
On the newsletter. So like the example I gave about my experience with, getting held up and all that. If I was the customer, I would have told that story in an interview kind of like this, like we're doing right now. And then my company would have taken that and just kind of cleaned it up and turned it into a nice little well-written story on the cover of that newsletter. And so that's one of the things that we do as well under my agency, is to provide that, because it is a lot of work. It really is a lot of work to do that yourself. But if you got the time and the ability, I highly, highly encourage you to do it, because it works.
Nice. So what do you actually include inside there? Because I know you have your story.
Yes.
You talk about, obviously, your services that you offer.
Sure.
And what else would you throw in there?
So, so here's another part of this formula. So I know I mentioned that I do want to make it all about me, and I do with these newsletters. It's very important to do that. But at the same time, we're not trying to turn the newsletter into what I would call a pitch fest, gotcha. Right? So you also have to be very careful, because people don't need just another big booklet of advertisement.
Yeah.
Nonstop advertisement. So you have your cover article where you're really not selling them. You're really more just telling about your story, and you're building that relationship. But the other stuff is all of what I call the warm and fuzzy, which basically is, I'm talking like literally old school little crossword puzzle, a little word search, a little word finder, and things like that. So there's always going to be an element of that, because what happens is sometimes I'll send that newsletter to, let's say, a doctor's office. Mm-hmm. Let's say I have a doctor on my list that I would hope to get some business from one day. The person that's going to a lot of times end up looking at that newsletter are the employees of that doctor, right? So let's say the girl at the front desk opens up that newsletter. She actually is going to enjoy being able to sit there and do the word search and do the I think the other one is called Sudoku. Yep. Right? You ever heard of Sudoku? Mm-hmm. Yep. And so those are the people that are actually going to play around with that. So the newsletter ends up kind of getting passed around the office in cases like that. Usually ends up, because it's addressed to the doctor, it'll go to the doctor first, let's say in this example. Then when he's done with it, he'll kind of let the rest of the team play around with it. Okay. Cool. Another example is a lot of the stuff that you would see in a newsletter. So I got one that says, why Q1 is the most important quarter for your business. So that was like one article from my January newsletter. I did 4 easy cold weather recipes to keep you warm.
Oh, nice.
That was another article in there. Okay. This last one that I did here in February, I did an article about the Shark Tank. everybody knows what the Shark Tank is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so a few years ago, I had the opportunity to do a meet and greet with Damon John,
Oh,
from
nice.
FUBU,
Yeah.
right? Yep. So I was able to meet him, talk to him just a little bit, take some pictures with him. So what I did was I did a story about how, the Sharks are doing this. It was like some facts, like some fun facts about things that each one of the Sharks are known for, like little comments or little phrases that they're known for. And then at the bottom, I put that picture of myself with Damon John.
That is
just
so
to kind of make that full circle connection of like, this is my newsletter, and here I am hanging out with Damon John.
Right.
Right. Now, what business owner is not going to be at least a little bit impressed with that, Anthony?
Right.
You know what I mean?
I'm impressed right now. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Everybody is. Everybody. We all love. If you got even a little small bone of business owner in you, you're gonna love most likely the Shark Tank.
Yeah.
Right. And so anything like that will resonate with people. So that's just kind of an idea of like some of that fun content. That's why I call it warm and fuzzy, because it's more like fun facts, tips, tricks, things like that. The rest of the newsletter is all about that lighthearted stuff like that. And then that front article, that's the hard hitting article that builds that relationship.
Okay. Because I have a weekly newsletter, digital side of the house though. And
yes,
some people actually look forward to those. And
I believe it.
Because I was like, I didn't think that people were actually like, I see the click rate that people are opening them, but nobody ever responded back like, hey, I actually like your newsletter. It's only when I talk to them like on meetings, they actually say like, oh yeah, I noticed I like your newsletter, so it's really cool. And I was like, well, why didn't you say anything before?
You're right. Yeah.
Thinking like I just thrown it out there in the ether and that's it.
Yes, that's exactly right. No, you'd be surprised. And if you're putting out good content, you can get it to where people actually look forward to it. And that's how you know you're doing it right. But I will say, it's kind of like my point about the BNI meeting earlier. It's a long-term play. Okay. It's a long-term thing. So, month 1 and month 2, you're not going to be getting all kinds of, oh my gosh, this is great. No, but like month 6, 7, 8,
okay,
people are going to start maybe getting some feedback, and they're going to start saying, I really look forward to that. Or you bump into someone that you hadn't talked to and they've been receiving your newsletter, they're going to say something about it. A matter of fact, I literally got somebody that responded back to me that I saw and said, I loved your article about the Shark Tank. That was a part that stood out to them. You see? Yeah. So you do get that feedback like that. And then, of course, the best feedback of all is when you end up getting a response, because you will occasionally you should and you do need to put in a small, like what I call a soft offer. So like, I don't do it every single month because, again, this is supposed to be about content.
Yeah.
But let's just say month 2 or month 4 or month 6, someone
like every other month. I got you.
Yeah, you could drop a little soft offer that might say something like, if you are interested, we are running a promotion right now. Get your book done. We could take X dollars off of a book project.
Okay.
Just mention that you saw it in the newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or you could throw a QR code on your newsletter and you can say, scan this QR code right here and then fill out the little form. And we know for sure you came from the newsletter at that point, right?
Exactly.
So that's the beauty of those QR codes, is that you can actually implement those into the newsletter. And so when somebody scans it and takes advantage of an offer through the QR code, that's your confirmation right there that people are actually reading your newsletter.
Okay. See, I didn't even think about doing it on the digital side. Not considering, I haven't looked at the metrics to see if they're using it on their phone or on their laptops. So
yes.
I kind of dig a little deeper into the metrics for that.
Definitely. Yep. Yeah. So I guess you could say the point is that there's a lot of different things you can do with that, a lot of different directions you could go with it. But what's the most important thing? You got to stay in front of your list.
Yes.
And this is one of the most powerful ways to stay in front of your list is through this old school tactic that actually still works very, very well.
Okay. So this is the last question, because we're going to start talking about the future side of the house.
Sure.
Being selfish here.
No problem.
My list has been pretty stagnant. I think I'm roughly at like 150 subscribers to my newsletter at this point.
Okay, sure.
At the time of this recording, I'll say.
Yes.
And what would be, from my perspective, I'm just doing it all digital at this point.
Okay, sure.
What would I do to kind of grow it? Even if I get 10 more, what
Yes.
do you suggest that I do?
Absolutely. So I have a tactic that I think works very well with the podcast. Now, you may have already kind of tried this, you may have done this, but it's just a matter of making sure you have a legitimate and formal process to implement this. And that would be, I think you did mention this when we started the call, just at least making sure you have a lead magnet that you can give away. Okay. But you got to make sure that that lead magnet is very enticing to the type of people that you're talking to. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to set up a little landing page. There's a lot of different services out there. I can recommend you one. If you need a good one where you can build a very simple, easy landing page, you want to set up that landing page with a nice little hook. In other words, like a nice little domain name that correlates to what it is that you do. You go ahead and put your little lead magnet on there, and you also want to make sure you put some good copy, some good sales copy, right? That kind of explains. I like to do bullet points, so I might just do a little summary. You could go to Chat GPT and say, hey, I'm doing a lead magnet on the subject of XYZ. Give me some bullet points that I could use for something like that.
Okay.
Have you played around with Chat GPT yet, Anthony?
Yeah, I love it. I've been doing it. I love it.
Okay, there you go. Good. That's my new favorite toy right there.
It is.
and so I'm not trying to use Chat GPT to be like a replacement for my content, but I like to use it as a stimulator to get the ball rolling.
Definitely.
That is the absolute best thing that it's used for. So if I'm kind of stuck and I'm like, okay, I could sit here and brainstorm, come up with a bullet points, or I could just let Chat GPT at least get the ball rolling for me, then do that, right? And then now you went from a blank sheet to now you got some decent little content. Mm-hmm. So you put that on there, and then you go ahead and put your thing. You just at least want to put name and email on this particular type of lead magnet. Yep. And then whenever you do a show, you can start making sure that you give out that domain name and say, listen, I have this lead magnet. This is what it does. This is what it's all about. Please go to this website right here. You can download it absolutely free and get your hands on it. Again, you got to make sure it's something that the people who you're talking to, your listeners, your guests, and I think probably the good play would be to offer something like that to your guests that are coming on your show, like myself, to say, I got this little thing here. As soon as we're done, feel free to go to that website. Or when you and I are done with the call, that could be part of your follow-up, your little follow-up email, right? You would just send me an email saying, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. I really enjoyed it. If you haven't already, check this out right here. Yeah. And that will at least allow each person that you're getting in front of to be added to your drip campaign. Right. Yeah. Because you gave me something that was very appealing to me. Now I could flip it around and say, let's say you were my guest and we were talking about all these fun things about marketing and all that, because you're a business owner. So obviously this is what I'm telling you. It appeals to you, right? It's I'm in your wheelhouse right now with all this stuff because you want to grow your business. Mm-hmm. So if I have a little lead magnet, which in my case I do, it's my physical book. But what I did was I created like a presentation version of my book. Mm. So if you're in front of me, I'll give you my book. If you're not in front of me, I'll give you the link to watch my presentation.
I like that.
Again, it's just like a slide deck version of my book. And I came up with a catchy name for it. It's called the Rocket Book Pocket Book. Hey. Because what we do is we make the book in about 30 days. So that's why I call it a rocket book.
Nice.
So rocketbookpocketbook.com is my little hook. You would go on there. You can watch my little presentation. But most importantly, what am I doing? I captured your name and I captured your email. Yep. Right? So 1 out of 10 people may watch that presentation and decide they want to sign up for my book because, there's a decent little size investment to get that book produced. But the other 9 people may not be ready for that yet. Yep. But you better believe I'm going to drip on them. And right. So I'm going to put you on my drip campaign so that you can get my emails that I send out. I usually do about once a week. I'll skip a week every now and then, but I do try to put out good content about once a week or so. And then from there, I have different things or different tactics to try to eventually get my hands on your address. And that way, once I have your address, then I can add you to the physical newsletter. So now I got you showing up. I'm showing up in your inbox. I'm showing up also in your mailbox. And there's a much greater likelihood that you're going to eventually, in the next 12 months, do something with me between just those two alone, right? The mailbox and the email. So that's kind of what I would do if I were you, Anthony. I would set up something like that and send people to that so that they can grab your lead magnet. And so you can start at least the people that are coming on your podcast, maybe focus on really trying to narrow down whatever that lead magnet is for them, so that every person that comes on is very likely to join your list.
Yeah, because thinking about it now, I'm like, I need to have several lead magnets because, talking about finances, we talking about from business to business side of the house. That lead magnet is going to look different than just a consumer who's working just a 9 to 5. That's
right.
And then people who are looking for credit building and so forth. So I have to have different ones for each.
You're spot on. And that's exactly what a lead magnet is supposed to be, very niched, focused.
Okay.
So you got to have one for this crowd and another one for this crowd. And when you know that that audience is in front of you, or that person or that prospect, you're going to guide them to the right one. If you got a guy on your show who's a business owner, you don't want to give him the one that just talks about, maybe just consumer stuff. Mm-hmm. You want to give him more of your business related product or package, right?
Yep.
So for a while there, I was starting to learn a lot about, and I know you've heard about this, Anthony. It's called the infinite banking concept.
Yep.
Right.
Interview somebody about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that that's a great strategy for building generational wealth. But there's two different ways to go about that. There's a way to do it if you're a 9 to 5er, and there's a whole nother way to do it if you are a business owner.
Yep.
And so in that example, I would be doing a huge disservice to myself if I only had one lead magnet to present, even though I got two very different audiences.
Right.
So that's kind of the way that you want to go about that. You're definitely on the right track on that.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, I got a lot of work to do in the coming months then.
No problem. That's the life of the business owner, my friend. We're always going. We're always busy.
Definitely. There's no holidays, no weekends.
Definitely not.
So we're going to dive into the third segment here, which is talking about the features. So what skills or habits do you feel that you need to take yourself to that next level?
For me, Anthony, I'm a big proponent of never, ever, ever stop learning. I think one of my biggest beef with people that go to, I'm not real big on, and this is just my personal opinion. I'm not trying to dog anybody out, but for me, I'm not a good fit for traditional college. Gotcha. Okay. I was one of those people that just did not fit in that box. And you do typically see that with more of the entrepreneurial crowd, right? We're a little bit, it's a little bit hard to put us in a little box, because we start wanting to break out of that box, and then we want to make our own box, and then we want to put people into that box and build a business out of it. And so I didn't do real well with the traditional school setup. Excuse me. And so for me, that does not mean, though, that I don't want to learn. That does not mean that you shouldn't be constantly trying to educate yourself. It just means that there's more than one way to go about doing it. Okay. And so for me, I am a big, I have this enormous, just like your shelf back there. I got about 4, 5, 6 of those shelves like that, full of books.
Wow.
Because that's my number one thing. I'm constantly reading, and I'm constantly trying to learn more about, business in particular. I do have a couple other little, interests that I do buy some books for, but the primary overwhelming one is always business. Mm-hmm. So for about the last 12, 13 years or so, every chance I get, I buy another book. And I don't read the book from cover to cover, Anthony. I absolutely do not. I'm way too ADD for that. But what I do is I listen to the audiobook version of them, now that the majority of books are coming out like that. Mm-hmm. And then as I'm listening, there's always certain parts that make me just like almost, I kid you not, there's been times where I'm driving on the road, listening to an audiobook, an idea will come up that is so overwhelming. I have to pull over and like make a note of it write it down, or a lot of times I'll keep the book with me there in my passenger seat while I'm driving to work or what have you. And then when that comes up, I'll pull over and open up that section of the book, highlight it, underline it, flag it. And that way, when I get home later or when I get to the office, I could go back again and reference that. And then the next thing I do is I like to use those old school flip charts. You remember those big white flip charts where you can like draw and write all kinds of stuff?
Yep. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I like to use those. So I have one of those inside of my office. And anytime the entrepreneurial juices start to flow, I will go right over there to that whiteboard and I will make sure I do like what I call a brain dump. And I'll make sure that whatever little idea or what have you that came up, that I get it out there and I write it into existence on that little flip chart. And then I'll take a picture of it and I add it into Evernote. That way I got the digital version. But for me, there's something with my brain that works well where I grab the marker and I'm actually writing it. That just does something for me, right? Compared to just typing it out on the computer. Yep. And that's the reason why I like to have the flip chart. So I kind of have this little system of like read book,
you like me with
have this? Physical book, highlight. There you go. Yep. Perfect. And then go ahead and write notes about it on the flip chart, take picture of it. And so and then I'll go back and review that. And then every single week I create like some sort of a task list for myself. And I said, these are the things I need to do. And these are the things that I hope to do. Some of the stuff is like, I got to get this project done. Otherwise I don't get paid. So that's like,
it's a no-brainer on that one.
Right. But then there's more like a dream task list where it's like, I would like to be able to add this. I would like I'm working on a book right now that I'm writing. Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna go ahead and give you a little sneak preview of the name. The name of the book is slightly controversial, but I did it in a way where it wasn't completely vulgar. So the name of the book is called Cuck Foliage.
Hey, I like that.
Cuck Foliage. Okay, so yes. You probably can figure out what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, the very introduction of the book says something to the effect of, believe it or not, I'm not trying to criticize college in the sense that for some people it's absolutely necessary. Mm-hmm. If you're going to go ahead and be an MD, you kind of do need some college.
Yeah.
And we do need doctors. We do need lawyers. We do need accountants, right? And so all of these things are necessary. But the point that I'm trying to make is that I believe that there are a lot of people that are going to college that probably should not be.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? In my opinion, those people could have taken a different pathway where they could have spread their wings a little bit wider. Mm-hmm. College is actually a hindrance for certain types of people, but they only were told one thing when they were in high school: go to college, go to college, go to college, go to college. Yep. Nobody ever told them, did you know you could start a business? Did you know that was even a viable option? No, I did not know that. I was just told I got to go to college. Yep. That's the only option for me. And so some people end up going to college and they end up realizing that they're not doing well. And then it affects their self-esteem. And then it makes them feel like, well, am I dumb?
Yeah,
I guess I'm just not smart because I don't fit in the box. And so us over here in the world of entrepreneurship, we're like, no, you're not dumb. You're just made differently.
Yep.
And you need to just find. So the whole point of the book, really, Anthony, is just to enlighten people to understand that college is not the right fit for every single human being out there.
Yeah.
Some people, it's a beautiful fit. And if it is, then obviously that's the route to take. But you should at least question that once or twice in your life and say, am I really on the right path? Or am I, maybe I should just go to trade school.
That's an everyday question.
Maybe I should be a plumber. You see what I'm saying? So there's a lot of different pathways. I just feel like the overwhelming message put out by society, by the government, what have you, is college, 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 college. And then when I was working for 12 years in the financial world, guess what the number one problem I saw was, Anthony? Student loans.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying? And you know how many people that I spoke to that told me, I went to college for this, but now I'm doing that.
Yep.
I went to college, I got $30,000 in debt, but now I'm doing something that has absolutely nothing to do with that. So my takeaway after sitting down with people like that for 12 years was, I don't think college is for everyone. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I'm kind of on this journey to spread a little bit more awareness. Hopefully people can get their hands on something that at least tells them, you know what? I'm not saying college is not in and of itself a good thing, because it is. It's just, you got to figure out before you go and make that 50,000, 30,000, 100,000 investment, if this is really truly the path for you.
And that's the thing about college, is like, you don't have to go in at a certain age. It's okay to do it later. Because I took the long route, which I was in for at least 11 years. Long time.
That's exactly right. And that's the other thing I don't like. I don't like this thing where it's like, if you don't go straight out of high school, then you're not doing something right, and your friends are leaving you behind and all. No. You got to make sure that is truly the right path, because nobody else is going to pay your debt.
Nobody, no.
You know what I mean?
That should be your next book. Well, it might be my book.
There you go.
Oh, nobody's going to pay your debt. I like that.
Exactly. So, I mean, those are the kind of things that I just feel like, you're talking about future, right? Yeah. So that's kind of the direction that I'm going with a lot of this stuff. Is I want to raise more awareness about entrepreneurship in general, and why college could potentially be a hindrance for some people on that entrepreneurial journey. Because let me tell you right now, I got an MBA. I got an MBA in business from the School of Hard Knocks.
Hey.
Okay. I never stepped foot in a university, but I have an absolute MBA, but it's what I call my blood in the streets MBA, because I was out there hustling, grinding, suffering, all these things that you go through when you're running a business, but you're learning. That's the most important thing. And you're learning while you're actually doing it as well. So it's like in a sense, it's like a paid training. Sometimes it's an unpaid training, because you're not always getting paid, but it forces you to figure out how to get paid.
Yes.
So that's the silver lining on that one.
Yeah. Oh man. Is there anything else you want to say for the people before we get to the last 4 questions?
No, I think that's good. I think rambled on long enough, but we had some really good stuff here that we were covering, and I always get very excited to talk about this stuff, especially when I have a great person in front of me like yourself, because you're very receptive to it. And I could tell that I could just see the gears cranking in your brain as we're talking about this stuff.
They going, trust me. Yeah, they go.
Yes. So that always gets me very, very excited.
Awesome. All right. So final 4 questions.
All right.
Number 1, what does wealth mean to you?
Wealth to me, Anthony, is definitely not the traditional sense of wealth. If you can't figure out by now, I do kind of go a little bit against the grain in certain ways, in certain categories. I don't like to just jump in with the herd and just go along with the herd. I'd rather, kind of create my own path. One of those categories that I like to do that with is this topic of wealth, because since probably the beginning of time, we've always defined simply wealth as whoever has the most of it wins.
Yeah.
Okay. And I personally do not subscribe to that mentality. For me, it's really about finding a good balance in your life that works for you, finding a number that you're comfortable with, but most importantly, something that gives you what I consider to be the most valuable asset, which is not money, but rather time.
Yeah.
For me, time is the most valuable asset, because with money, you can there's no limit to how much you can earn, right? There's no cap to that. But the one thing that we all share, whether you're the richest person in the world or the poorest person in the world, we all share the exact same amount of time each day.
Yep.
Right? So the bigger question is, what are you doing with that time? And if you're doing something that makes you happy, and you don't really need a lot of money to accomplish whatever that is, to me, that's wealthy. That's what I consider to be wealthy. So for me, I enjoy running a business. I like working, but I don't want to do it 24/7.
No.
You know what I mean? I need some downtime too. I want to be able to take a break. I want to go ahead and take a little vacation with the family. I want to go ahead and just, if it's a Tuesday afternoon and my daughter comes up to me and says, "Daddy, can we go eat lunch?" I want to be able to say, yes, of course we could go eat lunch. I don't want to have to say, no, I can't do that, because I'm just constantly 24/7 overwhelmed with work.
Yeah.
So for me, that's what really wealth is all about. Now, that doesn't mean that you get to do that all your life. There's going to be periods of your life where you're in that hustle mode and you're in that grind mode because, like, for me, again, I had to start all over. So the last few months have not really been flexible time mode for me because I'm trying to rebuild a brand new company. Mm-hmm. But I'm already starting to get to that point where some of those time freedoms are starting to open up for me again. And so I know I'm in the right direction. I'm very much in the right direction with this thing. And that's why I love business ownership, because you can, when you have a 9-to-5 job, it's kind of like, well, that's my job. I work this schedule and that's that.
Yeah.
When you have a business, you get an added option of, do I want to do it this way? Do I want to do it that way? Do I want to work on this day? Do I want to be off on that? Basically, it's all up to you.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, right? You get to build it out the way that you want to build it out. And so for me, Anthony, that's wealthy. That's wealthy. Having that ability to decide and to choose how you do those things. Not about the car you drive, not about the house that you live in. More so, it's I was able to buy the house that I wanted based on the business that I have. Whether that's a basic house or a big house, at the end of the day, you got to choose. You got to decide how you went about doing that. As long as you buying that house does not make you a slave to your job. That's what I don't like. Don't go buy a Mercedes Benz. And then I take issue with people that have a luxury vehicle and they tell me, hey man, I got to go. I got to get out of here. I get back to work. And I'm like, okay, no, I understand. You got to work. We got to work. Don't get me wrong. But It sounds like you don't really own your time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm all for luxury vehicles, but I'm going to buy a luxury vehicle when my time is owned. Mm-hmm. When I could basically decide that I'm going to go here, I'm going to do this. And I'm not talking about, hey, I got a client meeting or something like that. Of course, we all got obligations.
Yeah, we got things to do. Yeah.
We all got obligations. What I'm talking about, though, is where you have a boss that's telling you, you will be here at this time. You will leave at that time. That is not an ownership of your time. And you're basically buying an expensive vehicle that has you a slave to that exact type of scenario right there. That's where I try to tell people, like, are you really free? Are you really truly free? If that's kind of the setup that you have right there. And in my opinion, it's not worth having luxury items if I'm just going to have to turn around and be a slave to all of that type of stuff.
Nice. All right. Number 2, what was your worst money mistake?
Oh man. This one's a little harder for me, Anthony, because there were a lot.
Yeah.
There were a lot of them over the years. Yeah. I made lots and lots of money mistakes. Like I had mentioned earlier, I ended up in a situation very early on where I did have a lot of debt, credit card debt, because I was young, didn't know what I was doing. And that's why I ended up having to go that Dave Ramsey route.
Okay.
That's why I ended up having to work multiple jobs to pay it off. Right. And so at that point, I was very much a slave to my debt. No question. And I was having to put myself in very dangerous scenarios just to try to pay it off. Just because it was so overwhelming. The other thing I ended up having to do was we ended up having to move out of our apartment at that time, me and my little young family, and move in with family.
Oh, wow.
And let me tell you, that does not work very well in a lot of scenarios. Some people can make it work, but for us, it did not work very well. And so, but that's how bad the situation was like, I was so overwhelmed. My wife at that time was, she was going to school because she was trying to be a school teacher. Mm-hmm. And so she was like, okay, I don't have time to do anything else other than school, work during the day, which she worked at an elementary school, and then college at night. Right. So it was up to me to step it up and figure out other ways to pay these debts off and get us out of that situation. So that's why I started working those jobs and doing these things that I didn't want to do. And that's part of why we had to move out of our apartment for a few months. And, so there were like huge sacrifices that we had to make, putting a big strain on my relationship with her and making life very difficult at that time. Thank God we got through it all. But looking back, Had I known that that was going to be the route that was, that was ahead,
Yeah.
I think I might have been a little bit more careful about my spending and making sure that I didn't get into so much debt that it put me in a situation where I could have never imagined that I would be like, out on the streets getting held up.
Right.
Because I was just trying to pay off some debt.
So I have this question. It's not part of the final four, but who was the spender between you and your wife?
I definitely do think it is me.
Okay.
Yeah, it's me.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. The good news is, though, Anthony, is that in recent years, in the last, 10, 12 years, my spending went from buying things that I don't need to, if I'm going to buy something, I'm really looking at the return on investment.
Copy.
So now, like, I get all excited about spending a lot of money if it's like a course on, how to build wealth or how to grow my company, or, so in other words, I feel good about spending $2,000-$3,000 on something if I know that it has the potential to give me a return.
I see.
What I made the mistake on was just buying stuff where you buy it and there's no potential for a return on that thing, right? It's just like a dead liability right there. So that's one thing. That's one big change that I made on my spending habits is I'm always looking for stuff that's going to actually do something and return my money. And on a big scale, that could even be like real estate or, a little side hustle business, a vending machine, stuff like that. Like if you gotta get that dopamine hit and buy something, at least buy something where it'll put some money back in your pocket.
Definitely. All right. Number 3, what is your favorite financial or non-financial book?
Oh man, I'm going to have to go with my favorite business book of all time. The one that really did it for me, that changed the whole everything, the whole mindset shift, all that, which was Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Okay.
Robert Kiyosaki. Yeah, that was the one that did it for me. I read that book 2006, and that was the one that pretty much started getting my gears cranking away from 9-to-5 mindset into business owner mindset. So I got to give all glory and credit to that book because that's the one that really did it for me.
Since we're talking about sales, I actually thought you were going to say green eggs and ham, but it's okay.
That's a good one too. That's a very good one too.
Number 4, what is your favorite dish to make?
Oh man. So I am a little bit of like a wannabe chef.
Okay.
In my family, I'm the chef of the family. My wife makes great food, but she's like, I'm making you a basic content meal to fill your tummy up.
Okay.
if the kids want something that's gonna get them all excited, they know they come to daddy or something like that. And so I do have quite a few. That I do, but I'm gonna just have to go with there's this little steak that they serve at the Brazilian steakhouse. Have you ever been to one of those Brazilian steakhouses? I
have. Yeah.
Okay. That's like meat heaven, right?
Yeah, it is.
And so I discovered one of the meats that particular place uses is called a picanha. That's the name of that cut of meat that they make in Brazil, picanha. So I was able to find that. I was able to make that at home. I got the little swords because they serve it like on a little sword.
Yep.
And I was able to roast it like that. And so I'm a meat eater, man. I love meat. I love steak. And lately that's been my favorite. So I'm going to have to just go with that. Hopefully that's not like opposite of what you were looking for, but that's the dish that I like to make lately.
No, I had to look it up right quick. I was like, yeah, this is to me. But they put on skewers and everything. Yeah. Exactly.
That's like they consider that like their house specialty, the picanha meat. Yep. Mm-hmm. It's got like that little fat cap on the top.
Yeah.
And so you get that little crunch from the little fat like that. It's not something that you want to eat on the regular. That's for sure. It's one of those every now and then kind of dishes because it is definitely not the healthiest in the world, but boy, does it taste good.
Yes. Oh man. All right. Now you got me thinking I need to go get something to eat.
Yeah, I think you got a lot to process with everything we talked about. We talked about some good stuff.
Definitely. And for those of you who are listening right now, I highly recommend that you go back and let me know, or at least put in the comments. And if you're on Spotify, you can actually leave a comment for this particular episode, just to kind of say what parts that really stuck out to you. And I would love to hear about it. And I'm sure Marco would love to hear about it too, because I mean, this is some really good thing. We love feedback to know that we
Yes,
actually are resonating and doing the right things to serve you as the customers.
exactly.
So, Marco, the very last question of the show, which is, where could people find out more about you?
Yeah, so my company is called Expert Publishing Associates. So you can go to expertpublishing.associates. It's instead of .com, it's .associates. That gives a little bit of information there. You can also check out my Pocketbook presentation if anybody is interested in the potential for having a nice little book that you could give out as like I mentioned earlier, the ultimate business card. It's also the ultimate lead magnet as well. And so that's pocketbook.com if anybody wants to watch that short presentation. And that's really the two primary things that I utilize. You can also look me up on LinkedIn as well if you want to make a connection with me there.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Marco. It's definitely a pleasure. Definitely some gems. And man, I really do look forward to having you back on the show, because I wanted to share with you where my progress on my lead magnets and how far I've come since our episode and since our recording.
I would love that, Anthony. You're a great host. You got a great show, and you make this so easy, man. I mean, you made it easy for me to just keep on rambling over here. So you're obviously doing something right. So thank you very much for having me.
No problem. Thank you so much. All right, everybody. As y'all heard before and earlier, if y'all want to get on my newsletter, go to aboutthatwallet.com/newsletter so we can start pumping out some great content, give you some value as well. And so that when I start putting out some lead magnets, you'll be the first to know about them. All right, everybody. You gotta be safe. I'm out. Peace.
Bye.